Ever feel like you're running a marathon while sitting perfectly still? You know, we're all paying a price for staying on that we never actually agreed to. We look around and see a world that's more connected than ever. Yet, somehow, we've never felt more emotionally and mentally drained. It's that heavy, persistent fog that follows us from the moment we wake up to the moment we finally, hopefully, fall asleep. We've been conditioned to believe that being productive means being accessible at all times. But we're starting to realize the hidden toll that takes on our inner peace, right? We're essentially living in a state of high alert. Our nervous systems are just waiting for the next notification, the next email, the next social obligation, even when we're just trying to enjoy a quiet moment. This is the invisible marathon, and we're all running it together, even if we don't realize it. But what if the reason we feel so perpetually stuck isn't because we lack willpower, but because a fundamental part of our biology has been, hijacked? We're talking about something called the refractory period. Actually, it's the secret biological switch our brains use to signal that the race is over, and it's safe to actually stop. For most of us, that switch has been accidentally jammed in the on position by the constant noise of the digital age. We're going to explore why this happened to us, and more importantly, we're going to show you exactly how to fix that switch by the end of our time together, so we can finally reclaim the rest we've been craving. You know, we often think our stress comes from that specific notification. Maybe it's that one work email during dinner, or the sudden ping of a text late at night. But we've noticed that even when the phone is way over in the other room, that heavy, restless feeling, it doesn't just disappear. That's because the true cost of being always on isn't actually the data we're consuming. It's the mental bandwidth we lose just by being available. We call this the weight of the unseen. You see, it's that subtle background hum of anxiety telling us we need to be ready to respond, react, or perform at any given second. We've essentially traded our inner peace for a state of constant hypervigilance. I mean, our brains were never designed to be live 24 hours a day, yet we've somehow accepted this as the new normal. Think of it like keeping dozens of browser tabs open, right in the back of our minds. Even if we aren't looking at them, right? They're still draining the battery. This internal pressure to be constantly accessible creates a unique kind of exhaustion, a true soul weariness that a simple nap just can't fix. We're so busy being on for the world that we've forgotten how to be in for ourselves. We feel this pressure to be seen and to stay relevant, but in that process, we're neglecting the quiet, private parts of our psyche, the parts that only grow in the silence. It's a heavy price to pay for a connection that, let's be honest, often feels paper thin. It makes us wonder, if we spend every waking moment processing external information and maintaining our digital presence, what parts of our humanity are we actually leaving behind? What are we sacrificing in the shadows while we're so busy staying in the light? We need to look closer, together, at what happens when our internal world becomes public property. You know, we often think of burnout as just being tired, but there's a deeper biological mechanism we're bypassing every time we reach for our phones in a quiet moment. It's what psychologists call the refractory period, and biologically, this is our low alertness state. I mean,
It's really the time our brains require to process emotions, consolidate memories, and essentially clear out the mental cobwebs from the day. When we stay perpetually connected, we're doing something quite unnatural to our nervous systems, right? Slightly firmer, but still kind, we are forcing ourselves into a state of chronic hypervigilance. And in this mode, we aren't actually living our lives. We are merely processing data. We're reacting to headlines, responding to pings, and scrolling through lives that aren't ours, you see? We're so busy intaking information that we never give ourselves the space to actually integrate it. This leads us to a core paradigm shift we need to embrace if we want to find peace. We have to acknowledge that we cannot heal in the same environment that keeps us triggered. If our digital space is a constant source of comparison, urgency, or noise, our brains never get the signal that it's safe to drop the guard. We stay in a defensive crouch, wondering why we feel so drained, even when we haven't done anything physically demanding. To reclaim our refractory period, we have to recognize that doing nothing isn't a waste of time. It's actually the highest form of mental maintenance. It's where the healing actually happens. But even if we understand this, well, there's a reason we find it so incredibly difficult to just put the phone down and be still. There's a specific psychological trap that makes the silence feel dangerous, and it's tied to a phenomenon that most of us are experiencing without even realizing it. We need to look at why our brains have started to perceive quiet as a threat to our survival.
If that silence feels heavy, or maybe even a little bit scary, it's because, we've collectively lost the habit of being alone with ourselves. We've spent so long in a high alert state that peace actually starts to feel like a threat. But to break that cycle, we need to move from survival mode into what we call a healing protocol. It's about building a sanctuary for our minds, and we can do that through 3 gentle, intentional shifts. The first step we take is implementing a digital sunset. About 60 minutes before we plan to sleep, we silence every non-essential notification on our devices. We aren't just putting the phone away, we're signaling to our nervous system that the day is officially over. This simple boundary allows our cortisol levels to naturally drop, clearing the way for the deep, restorative rest our brains are actually starving for. We start to treat that hour before bed as sacred ground. Next, we introduce the practice of micro-solitude. We often feel like we need a week-long vacation to recover from burnout, right? But the real power lies in the small gaps. 3 times a day, for just 2 minutes, we step away from every screen. We find a window and just look out. Calmly, by shifting our eyes from a glowing rectangle to the distance, we're physically allowing our focal length to reset, which sends a direct signal to our brain to de-escalate. We let our minds wander without a destination, allowing all that mental dust to just settle. Finally, we have to change the way we view our presence in this digital world. We often treat our availability like a debt we owe to everyone who has our number, but we need to reframe availability as a gift we give, not a balance we have to pay off. By setting clear do not disturb hours, we aren't shutting people out. We're practicing a deep form of self-compassion. We're making sure that when we do show up for others, we're actually there, not just a hollowed-out version of ourselves running on fumes. We don't look at these as chores or more items on a to-do list. We see them as acts of rebellion against a world that wants us always on. But as we start to reclaim this space and the noise begins to fade, we might notice something we didn't expect. We might realize that the reason we were so afraid of the quiet wasn't just the absence of noise, but a specific realization that only surfaces when the screens go dark. There's a hidden truth about our productivity that most of us are still terrified to face. Honestly, that terrifying truth is actually pretty simple. We've been taught to believe that our value
Our worth is tied directly to our visibility. We feel like if we aren't constantly doing something, we somehow aren't being someone. But here, in our community, we choose a different path. We are choosing presence over performance. We're beginning to see that the time we spend in the off position, well, it isn't wasted time. It's the very foundation of our humanity. Because the reality is, turning off the noise is the only way we truly turn on our capacity to love deeply and to create authentically. When we stop performing for the world, we finally start living for ourselves. We discover that the quiet we were so afraid of, it isn't an empty void. No, it's a fertile ground where our best ideas and our deepest connections actually grow. We'd really love to hear how you're reclaiming your own space today, right? What's one small win you've had lately in choosing presence over the screen? Maybe it was just a morning coffee without a single notification, or a walk where you actually looked at the trees instead of your feed. Share those moments with us in the comments below. And if you're finding peace in these conversations and want to keep exploring the depths of your own mind, we invite you to subscribe to Psyche Unveiled. Honestly, we're just so glad you're here, so we can continue this healing journey together. Remember, your peace is not a luxury, it's your home. Let's keep returning to ourselves, one quiet moment at a time.